It dawned on me a long time ago. I mean, I grew up in a scene in its relatively early days where, you know, we danced to literally anything, any rock and roll band. And not to say you shouldn't or you can't. I quite enjoy swinging out to a rock and roll band occasionally. But when I when I worked out that I was getting better, it was because I was listening to a lot of swing music. And obviously now being a lot more experienced than I was back then, the more events I go to that have really good DJs or really good bands, preferably bands, but really good DJs as well, are the ones where I just have the greatest time, you know. And I think the music, I actually see students who say they don't necessarily care about the music sometimes, but then if I know them, like I can tell when they've had a really good night, and it's generally when the music's really good. And I would say the music has a real swing and rhythm to it. It was huge. And now it's part of me wishes only part of me wishes almost I didn't have that realization, because sometimes if the music's not right there for me, I can and I do dance, but it's not that fire, you know, like I can't find that thing. So yeah, I remember the first time I heard this Gramophonia band that I was talking about, and Jonathan Stout actually, when we were at LHC last year, it was just like, what is this? Those two bands, I'd never heard big bands like them before. And I've heard some pretty good big bands, but it was a whole other level. Partially, I think, because those two bands, and I'm not a jazz musician by any stretch, so forgive me if my terms are wrong here, but they really found that influence that hadn't been touched by bebop yet. Because obviously when these sounds were coming out, I don't think bebop had really existed yet, certainly in the earlier stuff. So in bands back home, we have some great big bands, but almost every soloist has a bebop edge to it. So it's really interesting to hear these two bands have really obviously worked on going, how did it sound? Obviously they're still doing their own thing, but it's so great to just hear like a Lunsford tune sounding like Lunsford. Like it's so inspiring and exciting. And I think, yeah, so there's that turning point of going, well, dance to whatever, which is great, or dance to this music like this, which is great. It's a blessing and a curse sometimes, I think.